All right, so now we should be in the recording part of it. I'll go ahead and share the screen. And now you should start to be able to see what's on my screen as far as the locational arbitrage. That's problem one. Problem two would be triangular arbitrage. And now we're talking about covered interest arbitrage. So if you remember back with the arbitrage conditions was basically trying to figure out how to make a riskless profit if something's not in equilibrium. So the equilibrium conditions were given by locational arbitrage in terms of spot rate and triangular arbitrage in terms of cross rates. And now we're going to be looking at forward rates. And so if we go back and look, remember that the difference in interest rates between the US and the foreign currency was really part of the premium that we found when we looked at the forward rate relative to the spot rate. So what we showed earlier was that the premium was approximately equal to the difference in interest rates. Now, the other way that you can find the premium is just solve for this equation here. We'll call it 1. And you can see that forward divided by spot is equal to 1 plus P. So the forward rate divided by the spot rate minus 1 should be equal to P. And if we know that P is approximately equal to the difference in interest rates, then this is how we get the interest rate parity line. So the interest rate parity line is just a 45-degree angle cutting between the X and Y axis. And it basically says whenever X is equal to Y, it should be on the line. Now, if we have a condition, and this is the lower half of quadrant 1, the all of quadrant 4, and the lower half of quadrant 3. If you have any point that falls in this area, which is below the line, then below the line means that US investors can use covered interest arbitrage. Did someone have a question, or were they just? Anyway, well, I didn't see a question, but maybe I can't see everyone. Try to make my box bigger. All right, so again, below the line is where US investors can use covered interest arbitrage. Above the line, which would be the upper half of 1, all of 2, and the upper half of 3 is where foreign investors can use covered interest arbitrage. So the line doesn't have to be exactly thin. It can be a little bit. So the farther you are from the line, the more profit that you'll make. So if you look up here, basically you can take these two rates. One's the spot rate, and one's the forward rate. And knowing that the forward rate divided by the spot rate minus 1 equals P, we can find P from these two numbers. So if you took, for instance, 0.625 divided by 0.615 minus 1, then you would end up with what? You'd end up with about 1.0163, or about 1.63%. Okay. So that says that the forward rate is really selling at a premium of about 1.63%. But the difference in interest rates, if we just look at the difference in interest rates, we can see that the difference in interest rates is 0.5%. All right. So now what we've got to do is go out on the onto our graph that shows on the x-axis the forward premium measured as forward over spot minus 1. And then we need to look on the y-axis as the difference in interest rates and see where it hits. Okay. So if we kind of, let me see if I can get some more workspace here. Okay. Where I can still see it, or I might just have to erase it. Okay. But I'll just write down below. I've got the, of course, I've printed it out, so I've got that advantage. But if we look, and we draw a new line, and I'll try to make it somewhat to scale. So if I look at the forward premium, and remember the forward premium was 1.63%. So if I go out here to 1.63%, but I only go up 0.5%, then that puts me right in here. And I went up 0.5% because this is the difference between interest rates. Okay. So if I go over 1.63% and go up 0.5%, then I'm clearly below the line, which is where US investors can use covered interest arbitrage. And we'll be able to see it mathematically here. So if you had $100,000, let's go ahead and look and see what would happen. If you had $100,000, and you could earn over the course of 1 year in the US 2.8%. Then at the end of 1 year, you would have $102,800. Just by depositing, that would be a US investor depositing money in US account. Now we compare that to a US investor who's going to deposit money in a foreign account. Now look what's going to happen. If he deposits money in a foreign account, he's going to deposit New Zealand dollars. And he's only going to earn 2.3% on the New Zealand dollars. Okay? But when he converts them back to US dollars, he's going to pick up that forward premium. So that's where the advantage is, sort of the difference. So the first thing we have to do is figure out, hey, if we have $100,000 and the current spot rate is 0.615, that's US dollars per 1 New Zealand dollar. Then the question is, how many New Zealand dollars can we get with $100,000? So the $100,000, since each New Zealand dollar is only worth 61 cents, if you take 100,000 US dollars divided by 0.615, you're going to end up with 162,000, let's just round up to 602 New Zealand dollars. Okay? So that's what you end up with today. Now, if you invest that money and 1 year later, you're going to earn only 2.3% on the money. Now we've got to earn 2.3% for 1 year. So if you take the 162,602 and you earn 2.3%, you're going to end up with 166,341.5 New Zealand dollars. So we'll write it out a little bit neater. So we started out with 162,602 New Zealand dollars. And then 1 year later, because we earned interest at 2.3%, we're going to end up with 166,341.5 New Zealand dollars. Okay. Now, obviously, what we want to do back at time period 0 is lock in a forward rate so that we don't face any risk, a forward rate to sell New Zealand dollars. Now, what's nice is back at time period 0, I go back up here, at time period 0, the forward rate was 0.625. So if we lock in a forward rate to sell New Zealand dollars, doesn't matter what the spot rate is, we're selling New Zealand dollars at 0.625. Then 166,341.5 New Zealand dollars times 0.625 would give us 103,963 and change US dollars. Yeah. Now this is important too. Okay. The additional profit is the fact that we got to compare apples to apples. So the additional profit is just the difference between the 103,000 minus what he would have had investing in the US after 1 year. So if we take this minus 102,800, then we end up with basically a profit of 1,163. So the reason that he's got a profit, is because if you look at this line, you can kind of see, hey, the difference in interest rate was only 0.5%, or what we call 50 basis points. So what happens is he is only giving up a 50 basis point difference in interest rates to pick up 163 basis points or 1.63% difference in terms of the currency appreciation. So you should end up with about 1.13% more money, okay? Or the answer should be somewhere around, with $100,000, a little over 1,000, okay? So it turns out to be $1,163, which kind of makes sense, which is a little over 1%, okay? So you can see the fact that when interest rates in the US are higher than interest rates in the foreign currency, then you should see that foreign currency selling at a premium. All right. Now, let me get off the screen share for a second. And I'll go back here and see if there's any questions. I got to scroll through. Any questions, or you want to do one more example first and then we can?
Where did you get the, you wrote lock-in forward rate to sell New Zealand dollars and you got 100,963. Where'd you get that number from?
The 0.625?
No, the like 100,000, wait, 103,963.
That, okay. So let me go back to the share screen real quick. All right, so if you look right here, what she was asking is, how did we get the 103,963? Okay, well, remember this forward rate at 0.625 was given in the problem. Okay, all right. So what I started out, how I got the 103,963 is back here. Okay, so if we had $100,000 on day 0, we could convert that $100,000 into 162,602 New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason for that is because the spot exchange rate is 0.615. So then that number, I just kind of cleaned everything up. That number, this was just a cleanup of this. Okay. All right. So the 100,000 converts into 162,602. So that's how much I'd have on day 0.
Mhm.
Then if I invested in a New Zealand security, I could earn 2.3%. The 2.3% is basically taking 160. It's not right. Oops. I don't know what happened. Maybe there's not enough white space. No, I'm just not sharing the screen. Technical difficulties. Hold on a second. I lost my mouse. All
I think
right,
I got it though.
I
So
know,
you,
but now I'm stuck on this. Let's see. Start stuff. Alt is. Oh, now I'm locked up. All right, let's see. Well, I don't know what to do when it locks up. All right, well, let's, I might just have to log out and come back in because everything's locked up on my screen. All right, let me log out and try to get back in. I can't even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my other professors is just having us write out our work on like a notebook paper and take a picture of that. And then like we could, yeah, and submit that and then like, I don't know, filled out the answers on whatever document you provide, but I guess whatever works for people. Mhm.